God, we thank you so much for your beautiful design in us and in this family of God thing, and husbands and wives and the family and the way you've orchestrated all that. God, you're brilliant and beyond anything we could ever imagine. And we thank you for the blessings that you've offered us, the relational blessings that you've offered us. And God, I just ask that today as we open up your word, we look at these principles that are in your word, I believe that are so rich, God, that we would walk in healthy relationships as a result of understanding your word and applying it to our lives. So God, lead us and guide us into truth. Father, in your name we pray. Amen. So I remember one time a preacher that I was listening to, he says this, he says the number one hardest verse of Scripture to live out in the entire Bible has to be 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. It simply says this: husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. I mean, come on. Like, you can tell me to love my wife, check, right? Serve my wife, I'll do that. Respect my wife, care for my wife, protect my wife. I can do all of that. But understand, like, that's a big ask, isn't it? Like, that's tough. But here's the thing. That's the Bible. It's not just like, I didn't make that verse up. Like, it's in the Bible. Like, so, you know what? It's not only possible, because I know some of you are going, that's a good joke, right? It is not only possible to live with our wives in an understanding way, it is actually asked of us. Like, some of us are just content, just love my wife and just fine, I'm never going to get her, but like, apparently I have to do these things, right? Like, that's not the relationship that the Bible talks about. It's not the relationship that Peter's talking about. We're going to look at what Paul is talking about. He says, live with your wives in an understanding way. Because when we can learn to understand each other, we can learn to better love each other. And as we better love each other and understand each other, that's when our marriages begin to thrive. But it really is so important at the root of it. Sometimes we stumble into good decisions, don't we, guys? We stumble into, hey, that works, right? But to understand why that worked is kind of an important thing if we want to carry this relationship, this marriage on for the long run. We need to be able to understand our wives. And part of that, and we're gonna when we continue to look at Ephesians chapter 5, we're going to see some clues in this that I think are so rich and honestly have affected our marriage and really relationships even outside of marriage in such incredible ways. Last week I mentioned that as we talked about the submit and the loving husbands and wives and that kind of thing, and mutual submission, I made the comment that it really can be applied in a lot of different ways. But I'll be honest, I realized it can be applied, but you really got to work to apply it. This, however, has, as these principles were taught me years back, it was really good for our marriage. It really good some self-understanding, some understanding of Beth. But then it also affected the way that, at the time I was a youth pastor, and the way that I interacted with high schoolers, both guys and the girls, and understanding some things that made me able to care for and meet the needs of young people better. Coworkers, male and female coworkers, or run into a catch and run into some issues and some conflict or some tension, and then begin to apply these principles. Originally, the context of it is marriage, but apply these same principles to the workplace, and it is amazing how much like the Bible works. And so even in whatever context it is, last week, you could stretch it and you could make it fit other relationships. This is just right there out to grab. So whether you're married or whether you're single, we're going to use marriage as the context that we're going to discuss them, but these principles apply to men and women regardless of the relationship. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
But here's the root of it. And what we got to understand is that each and every one of us as individuals, we are created in the image of God, right? Most of us, we proclaim faith in Christ, we'd agree with that, right? We were created in the image of God. But I would go a step further even, that men are created in the image of God in a specific way to reflect certain characteristics and attributes of God's image through our masculinity. And in the same hand, on the other side of things, women are just as equally created in the image of God to reflect a different set of attributes and characteristics of the image of God through their femininity. It's different. Neither one better or worse, but different. Truth of the matter is, God made men different than he made women, right? Right? And in today's society, we tend to want to ignore that as much as possible. And here's the deal. I'm not saying that all men are the same, all men think the same, all men behave the same, all men act the same. In the same way, I'm not saying all women are the same, they think the same, act the same, behave the same, have the same attitude, right? However, though I'm not going to go to that extreme, we don't want to go to the part so far to say just ignore the clear differences in the way that God has designed men different from women. There's some very inherent things, and it's not something to apologize for, it's something to celebrate, because each of us reflect the image of God in a different and beautiful way. And if we erase those lines, we miss out on some very, very important richness in marriage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that's what makes it so rich, is that then we come together as a couple and we're both reflecting God in a completely different way, but his design is for us to work together and then reflect him together.
And so now when you have a man, because in the verses prior, right, it says that the two become one. When that two become one, you now as a couple are able to reflect a much more full and complete image of God to the world that we're called to. Isn't that cool? And so often we see our differences as contrary or conflicts or liabilities, but really it's one of the greatest assets as a married couple that you have, is that your spouse is not just like you. And it's not coincidence, it's by God's design. So we come to the verse today that we're going to look at, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33. And we just want to camp out on this verse because I think there are some rich, some understanding that we can have of our wives and of our wives of our husbands in this. It says this. So profound, so simple. Each one of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Just some key observations here. First of all, we mentioned last week that this comes in the last verse of a text where Paul is addressing, giving some teaching on marriage and some direct instruction on marriage. And in fact, it's the largest collective in one kind of paragraph or couple paragraphs section of Scripture that directly teaches on marriage in the whole Bible. And what's interesting is we said that guys need to hear the same thing over and over, don't we, before we finally get it. So there's three times that Paul gives instruction in this whole text that says, husbands, love your wives. Husbands, love your wives. Husbands, love your wives, right? Just the same thing three times, because sometimes, guys, let's be honest, that's what it takes, right? But then the instruction of the women were wives, submit to your husbands, and this last one, respect your husbands. And here's what's interesting, is that never once does Paul tell wives to love their husbands. Is that interesting to you? It is to me. Wives are like, yes, right? Off the hook. No, here's the deal. Because ultimately, our supreme rule of life as followers of Christ is to do two things, right? Love God and love your neighbor as yourself, right? And your husband is your closest neighbor. So you're called to love your husband clearly, right? And in the same way as last week, we looked at, Paul introduced this idea of mutual submission, submitting to one another. And he says to the wife, submit to your husband because of certain aspects. And if you weren't here last week, go online, check it out. Just be ready. It's long, sorry. But he never says to submit to the husband, even though that's still the understanding. But the submission comes when he, as Christ to us, places himself under his wife to serve his wife. There's this idea of mutual submission, right? In the same way that there's this mutual submission that he talks about in a relationship, there's also this idea of mutual love. But he says to husbands, love your wives. He says to wives, respect your husbands. That respect is really just another expression of love. It just looks a little bit different. And what's interesting, and I find it interesting that Paul says, wives respect your husbands and husbands respect your wives. I'm blurring it all right? Wives respect your husbands, husbands love your wives because, well, if I can be so bold, husbands, we're not always very good at loving our wives. So we need the instructions.
And wives, we're not always great at respecting our husbands. So we could use the reminder.
Right.
Right?
Now listen, did you hear that? I think you heard what I heard. We have got to, that hearing, that was the groan, right? We all heard it, right? We all groaned a little bit like, whoa, right? Here's what's interesting. We always have to be aware of our cultural biases. And I know none of us think we have cultural biases, but we're all affected by the culture we live in. We live in a culture today where the currency of society today in our American culture in today is love, right? Love. We need to love. You need to love. We all need to love. If you can love each other, right? That's what we all supposed to do. Everyone's supposed to love. Whether in the church, outside the church, that's just like love, 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 right? We get that. We understand that. However, that's not necessarily the case in all cultures, right? There are some cultures in the world that they value respect above love. And when I say love, because I'm saying respect is really an expression of love. I'm talking about the feeling, emotion, expressional acts of love, right? But there's some cultures that don't. That's not a thing, and they value like this respect over love. Well, and what we tend to do, like, well, that's because they're wrong and we're right, right? Like, right? Some of you're not laughing because you think that probably, right? We have to understand that we have these cultural biases. We're affected by our culture. Take it, for instance, and this is where you can feel it right here. Like, love is the currency, right? And so, guys, we know this. I'm supposed to love my wife. You're supposed to love your wife. You're just not very good at it, right? I mean, you're just not as good as you like to be. There's rooms where, like, I need to love my wife better. I need to love my wife. And we know, like, wives are supposed to love their husbands. They're like, yeah, I know. That's what I do every day. I love my wife. I love my husband, right? And then we say, we need to respect our wives, right? We need to show respect for our wives. It's not just about love. And then we say, and wives, you need to respect your husbands. And all of a sudden you go, did he just say that? He just said that. What? Respect your husbands, right? As if like, how come, do you see the problem? It's a cultural thing. It's not a biblical thing. Because what the Bible says is wives, respect your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. Now, we're going to explore this a little bit further, but what I want us to understand is truth is not dictated by the culture that we live in. Truth is dictated by the Word of God, right? And here's the cultural thought today. Love is a right, respect is a privilege. That's kind of just the understanding of the society that we live in today. Love is a right, respect is a privilege. Everyone deserves love. No matter who everyone deserves love. She deserves love, I deserve love. We all deserve love, but you got to earn my respect. You can like really stand on that, and you can get a lot of people behind you on that. But let's look at what the Bible says. It says, without questions asked, it says, without prerequisites, husbands, love your wives. And wives, you need to respect your husbands.
And wives, let me just encourage you from here for the next few minutes. Let's get past that knee-jerk reaction in us to say, well, I deserve respect too. Because nobody's saying that you don't deserve respect. But for the sake of your marriage, let's put aside those preconceived ideas. Let's just set it aside and really dig deep into what the Scripture is saying. Because what Paul is, he's not saying anything about traditional marriage roles. He's not talking about who does the dishes or different chores at home or different people's responsibilities and roles.
About who stays home and takes care of kids.
He's not talking about who makes the money. He's not talking about that. He is talking about God's design for men and women to live in this marriage relationship. And what it really comes down to is it's a heart issue. And if we are truly going to love our husbands or husbands love our wives well, then we really have to we have to learn how to understand them. And what it boils down to for us is that we have learned that we just speak different languages, right?
And some of you guys have experienced that before, right? Like you said something, and she came back with something entirely different. Like, what in the world? Do you not speak the same language? Truth of the matter is, oftentimes we don't speak the same language.
At least not our first language.
Right.
Right? And again, we're speaking in generalities, okay? So it's a scale. It's always a scale. And so women, you can find yourself somewhere on this scale. But generally speaking, our first language is to show our love with actions, whether that be through kind words or baking somebody's favorite dessert or giving them a hug. Our first language that we speak is to show that love through action, and vice versa.
Right. And as guys, our first language is not that, but it's respect. And respect, like I said, it's an expression of love. And again, like you said, women need respect, and men need to be loved. But it's not our first language. My first language is respect. And let's give it, for instance, okay? Let's give an example here, right? I think it's seen best when you see a group of guys together and a group of girls together. So you got a group of guys together, right? A group of guys that are bonded together. They enjoy each other's company. They have deep relationships. One might even say, if you're feeling super vulnerable, these guys love each other. That feels weird, right? Because we're men, right? But truth be told, this is a group of guys that love one another. They're committed to one another. They've got each other's backs. They might say that a little quicker, right? Like we're there for one another, right? It is natural for us to live and interact in the world of respect. What we're not going to do, let's say I come in and to a group of guys, maybe we're watching a game or maybe we're grilling something together, which that's super stereotypical, isn't it? Like sports and meat, but whatever. So we're doing our man thing, whatever that looks like, and I've got something to celebrate. I just got this promotion at work, or I just accomplished something I was working towards for a long time. I'm kind of like all excited, and I'm like, hey guys, man, check this out, and I say what it is. And this is what happened. This is the response. I'm excited about it. Hey, I just got a promotion. Man, the thing that I was looking forward to for a long time, I accomplished it. And a guy might come up to me, no words. He might come up to me and just give me that look that goes, gives me a fist, points the fist out, give me a little pound it, some knuckles. And my love tank is full, right? Right? Because you know what it means? Like we know, right? We know what it means. It means you the man. And I know you the man. Respect. We don't need to say another word, right? We don't need a hug. We don't need a hug, okay? We don't need you to go out and buy something to commemorate the day. We don't need flowery words and to tell all the stories about how it happened. Just, you know what? Truthfully, we told this beforehand, and I don't even think this was intentional. But we were walking out of service today, and Phil came up to me and he goes, Sean. And I went, right? No words, but I received that, right? And it's what we do, right? Because our first language is respect, right? So we don't need the rest.
But you've switched those circumstances, okay? And Terry and I went to coffee this week. We actually did. But let's say Terry and I are sitting at coffee again, and she walks in and she sits down and she says, oh, I just got to tell you. I got to tell you what happened. I got to tell you about this great accomplishment that I had or that my grandkids had. I just have to tell you this story. And this was so big. I have to tell you, this happened this week. And my response to Terry is going to be, see, I can't even do it from over here, okay? Because my response to Terry is going to be to reach across the table and squeeze her hand and say, I can't believe that. I'm going to look her in the eye and I'm going to say that. So I might even go around the table and give her a big hug because I'm so excited for her. And then if Linda walked in the room, I'd be, Linda, come over here, sit at the table, listen to Terry. Terry, tell it again. Terry, because I heard her and I want to hear her say it again because I know that she wants to talk about it again. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this day on my calendar, and next year I'm going to bake her brownies to celebrate what happened today. But if I had been in that same situation with Terry and sitting across the table from her and she tells me this story and I look at her and nod and stick my knuckles out, like what does that even mean? Did you even hear what I said, right? And so the same, then that translates over. And so you got these two people who see the world completely differently. And then we try to live this marriage relationship. And I come and I try to tell Sean a story about this life-changing event that happens. And I get done with it. And
I'm full of love for her. So I say,
like, what is that? What do I don't even know. I don't even know what to do with that. That's weird. And I would tell that story and I would be like, something's wrong here. This is not right. He's not hearing me or something because he's just not understanding, because we're speaking different languages.
Right. And it's not good or bad.
Right.
It's just
different.
It's just different. And I think beyond the just different, I think we got to come to the place where we understand that it's not even just different, but it's God's design. God did it on purpose. Why? I don't fully get that. But he did. He did it on purpose. And so much of the conflict that happens, or the tension that happens in marriages, is due to this: two loving people are trying to love each other how they want to be loved. And they're trying to love each other through their own first language, and it's not being received. I think an easy way to see this, and this is regardless of marriage or regardless of gender or relationship, is something that we've been acknowledging in one another and friends and whatnot recently, and been talking about, is this: the fact that whatever your strength is also the place where you tend to get most frustrated in others. Have you ever noticed that? For instance, so if you're a really thoughtful person, and you're always thinking of the people, you're always doing like nice, thoughtful things for people. Again, it doesn't matter if you're a guy, girl, the nature of the relationship. You're always thoughtful and doing thoughtful things for people. When you see somebody else that's not thoughtful, it drives you crazy, right? Because you're not, in your own head, you're not thoughtful because you work really hard at being thoughtful. You're thoughtful because God just kind of designed you that way, and you do it innately without thinking. And so your own understanding, it only makes sense that this is a normal human thing to think of this, right? And when you don't think of this, you clearly hate me, or you're the biggest jerk there ever is, right? Because it comes so naturally to me, I assume that it would come naturally to you, and you're withholding. Or maybe it could be something like you're a server. You just love serving people, right? In whatever capacity, the menial little tasks you love to do. You walk into a room and you straighten a picture on the wall because, well, it needed to be straightened, right? And you take initiative, and hey, you try to help out here and you help out there, and you see, everywhere you go, you see tiny little jobs that need to be done, and you go and do them. It just happens innately. You don't think about it. You don't try to be a servant. Sure, you know that it's good, but it comes really easily to you. And then you see somebody kind of sitting on the sideline. They're not as much of an initiator. They're not a go-getter, and they don't really do that kind of thing. You're like, what a lazy sack of bones. Like, quit being so selfish. Like, how do you even get to a point where you see that and don't do anything about it so easy, right? It makes sense because, well, I'm wired that way, right? And it could be a less tangible thing, like, say you've got a strong leadership gifting, right? And you are just in that leadership zone, and decision-making and leadership stuff makes a lot of sense to you. And then you see somebody who has this leadership position, and they're just floundering in their decision-making. They can't keep things moving forward. And you're just like, how? Like, it's not that hard to just make right decisions. Why do we get frustrated with that? We get frustrated because it comes naturally to us, so we just assume, like, we don't know if we say it out loud or think it through, but we assume that it should come that naturally to you, and if you're not doing it, then you're an idiot, right? Incompetent or just mean, right? Well, you apply that same thing into marriage, and you see where the conflict arises, right? because I speak the language of respect. Right, and I'm not, I think Beth would agree, I'm not one of these like super over extreme, oh, you have demand, like, no, I don't need all that kind of stuff. That even bugs me too. But honestly, it was really in studying this verse of Scripture that I started realizing this in me as well. And truth is I speak the language of respect. And so as a man, I'm very, very sensitive to, I can't pause right there, otherwise it threatens my masculinity. I'm really sensitive to issues of respect, right? As most of us guys are. Like maybe you look at, maybe outside looking into a circle of guys, you're like, yeah, but you're ribbing each other and making fun of each other all the time. How are you going to call it respectful? Here's the deal. Guys, don't we know this? I mean, it's so, like, we're keenly aware of this. When we're making fun of each other and poking jokes, there's usually not a gray area. Usually it's like fun. You cross the line, whoa, right? Right? Isn't that typically how it goes? Because we know how to stay in the bounds of respect because we live there. This is our native tongue. We're fun, we're having fun, we're ribbing, we're making fun, we're poking fun, we're having a good time, and then somebody says something with a touch of disdain and tries to mask it, and every man in the room is keenly aware of the disrespect that just took place. And I'm sensitive to that because I have this need for respect. And again, it is countercultural to be able to say that and not have to explain it away. But it's because I give and express love differently. And it comes through this expression of respect. Not good or bad, but because I'm a man and God designed us this way.
In the same way for women. So my response to Terry in that situation wasn't mustered up. It wasn't something I rehearsed. It's just something that naturally would flow out of me. And so when I go to love my husband and I make him his favorite food and I, whatever, I hug him and I do thoughtful things, like that's just what is naturally coming because that is my native tongue, and all the while it is not meeting a need
yeah,
necessarily.
And it might be like, cool, my wife is being nice, right? But I don't necessarily receive it as this real warm, loving action, and yet she's going, I'm pouring out my love on him, and I'm going, thanks, right? I don't even, right? And so let's give an example here.
Right.
Okay?
So let's say Sean comes home from work. I'm at the house, and he walks in the door, and I say, Sean, how was your day?
Like, I had an awesome day. Man, like, things were just lining up. I felt accomplished and got some tasks done at work, felt good, got compliment from my boss, or whatever it is. Like, all these, man, I had the perfect day. It was awesome. How was your day?
And mine was not so great. And so I am like, ooh, I'm glad you had a good day, but man, I'm just tired. I mean, I just like woke up this morning tired, and I didn't get enough sleep last night, and I'm just finding myself I just need like a few hours of sleep. Tired.
Well, babe, the good news, like, we don't have anything going on tonight, right? Like, and I don't think we have an early morning, so we'll get to bed early, we'll get to sleep in a little bit, we'll get you refreshed.
And I'm like, well, going to bed early is not even close to on my radar. Like, I have this to-do list, a mile long, and I am overwhelmed at the pace at which I'm able to get it accomplished, and I'm just overwhelmed. There's just so much to do.
But babe, I believe in you. You can, like, you got this. You can do this, babe. I believe in
Knuckles.
you.
There's the knuckles again.
So we go to dinner, or not go to dinner. We sit down, have dinner with the family, and we're eating and whatnot. And
Probably a dinner that I made really thoughtfully.
Probably. And I ate it less thoughtfully, and we're eating dinner, and then Faye starts acting up, and she's standing up in her high chair and getting her to sit down, and she's trying to crawl out, and we're putting her back in, and she's pushing her food away, doesn't want to eat that, and wants to eat that, and she's throwing it on the wall, and this and that.
And I've been dealing with that for hours, and I'm just like, this is just, if I have to tell that baby to sit in her chair one more time, it's not going to be good for anybody, so I just wish that I didn't have to tell her one more time to sit in that chair.
I've had a good day. I've had emotional capacity, so we kind of handle it. Yeah, whatever, it's fine. And so we get up from the table. The girls start clearing the table, doing the dishes, and I make my way into the living room. I grab my laptop, and as I'm sitting down, cracking open my laptop, I'm like, hey, babe, is there anything you need from me right now?
And I respond with, oh no, I got this, right? You said I got this, because, I wouldn't want to in any way infringe on this perfect day and this perfect world that you're living in. And then I storm off into my bedroom and I sit on the bed and I just sit there thinking, wait a second. I gave him all the signs, right? I all but painted a sign on the living room wall that said, I need a break. I need you to tell me to go into my room with some chocolate and not come out until the next day. Like, I practically said that. Like, anybody who loves me would have picked up on that. And is he just a complete idiot if he couldn't have picked up those signals?
And I'm sitting in the living room going, what just happened? like I was having this great day, and my wife even made my favorite meal, and I asked how I could help, and she jumps down my throat. Like, what did I do? Does she think I'm a complete idiot? Like no one has talked to me that disrespectfully all week long. And then I come home and I get it from my wife. Like, what is wrong with her?
And I'm thinking, what is wrong with him?
And so we go to bed that night, each hugging our own ends of the bed. And only bad things in store for the morning. Right?
Because I sure don't wake up the next day oozing respect. Right?
And I have no desire to make any loving actions towards her whatsoever. So what happens now is my lack of love towards her, because I've just been offended and insulted and disrespected. And so my lack of loving actions towards her is going to trigger disrespectful actions in her. And her disrespectful actions towards me is just going to perpetuate my lack of love towards her. And the less love that she receives, you see the problem here? And so my lack of love triggers disrespect. Her disrespect triggers a lack of love. And there are countless households across our country and our world that this is the normal marriage experience. And you just learn to live with it. No respect, no love, just roommates in the same house. Except usually roommates speak the same language. And there's only one possible way that anything changes. There's one possible way that any of that changes. Is when a disrespected husband listens to the voice of God and chooses not to wait for respect, but chooses in a state of being disrespected to love his wife like Christ loves him. Or a wife who doesn't feel or doesn't see loving actions coming from her husband, and she doesn't feel loved, but regardless of what his actions are, a wife chooses to say, regardless of what he's doing, I am going to follow the scripture and what it says, and I'm going to begin to show my love through my respect. And part of the thing, and I don't want to pick on the wives here, but part of the issue with even the cultural aspect of this right now is this understanding that everyone deserves love, but respect is a privilege, right? If love is a right and respect is a privilege, you see where some of the breakdown can take place. Because the wife can take confidence in the fact that I'm loving him. He's not loving me. Therefore, I have the right to withhold respect. But respect is just an expression of love. And so we've got to be really, really careful that we don't give ourselves loopholes, right? Because what the guy is feeling and may not be able to put words to is that I'm not being respected, I'm having a hard time loving. And it's just as fair, just as unfair, and just as wrong, no matter how you look at it. one just tends to be more socially acceptable. And so what we have to do as husbands, and I only start here, as husbands, we've got to learn how to love our wives. Now, like we said at the very beginning, we're not saying by any means that every wife is and every woman is wired exactly this way. And every woman, here's one of the biggest mistakes that guys can make and do make regularly, right? My buddy just did this for his wife, so I'm just going to cut and paste that onto my wife, right? My buddy just took his wife on a cruise, right? And it was like the greatest thing, and she was just like madly in love with him. He could do no wrong for months after that. I'm going to try the same thing. My wife gets horribly motion sick. Bad idea, right? Like you can't just, not every woman is going to be the same. And not every man is going to be the same. So we can't just cut and paste that. However, what we can do is learn that we do speak different languages. And I said, I'm not real far in that respect scale. And Beth may not be really extreme on that needs lots of love and affirmation scale. But what we've noticed in our relationships is where the tension comes is exactly in these areas. Because even though I'm not real far on that scale, I'm still a man designed by God as a man. And Beth is still a woman. And so I have certain needs. I need to be loved in a certain way. Not good or bad, just different, because God designed me that way. And Beth has certain needs, and she needs to be loved a certain way, not because she's more needy than I am. They're just different needs, right? And so guys, we said this last week, and so I want to double down on this. Men, God has called us to be the head of the household. That doesn't mean the boss. It doesn't mean the king. It doesn't mean the dictator. But it means the one that is willing to take responsibility for the direction and the health of his family. Starting with his wife and your relationship with your wife. Which means if you find yourself in this cycle, men, you better feel the full weight of this. And you better feel the responsibility of this because it's yours. That it doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter how your wife is treating you. You are called by God to sacrificially love your wife. And Peter instructs us how we're going to do that best. To live within an understanding way. Men, be a student of your wife. Study no one should know your wife better than you know her. I know that's hard to even imagine or comprehend, but keep working towards it. You can get there. Well, at least we can get closer than we are today. But we can get there, right? So men, you got to take this. And here we go like, love, that's not even my language. What do you mean? How do I start? I even try, but it's not even working. So let me just give you 3 tips, okay? 3 tips that they're not necessarily practical things to do. You're going to have to figure that out yourself because I'm not going to assume that your wife is the same as my wife, okay? So I'm going to give you 3 tips that are going to help you get in the direction of showing the acts of love to your wife that she needs. The first one is you need to think about your wife. Now, okay. Women, you're like, that's a point? That is the stupidest point I've ever heard in my life. Like, duh, right? Guys are like, oh, wait, let me write that down. Think about your wife, right? And here's the deal. We're wired different. That's fine. Good, bad, neither, just fine. Like, we are wired to compartmentalize, right? And again, not universally, but there's tendencies. We compartmentalize, which is a wonderful asset in certain aspects of life. We can like get into our work thing and be all on work. We're not going to think about our wife, not because we don't love her, but because I'm thinking about work. And then we get into our project, and I'm fixing the fence. And I'm not thinking about my wife while I'm fixing the fence, unless she's making me fix the fence, but I'm not thinking about my wife. When I'm fixing the fence, I'm thinking about fixing the fence. And it's not that I'm not loving towards her, it's just I don't think about my wife. And so what we do, we run our entire day, event after event after event after event after event, and then we don't think about our wife until we need something. And she knows that. You may not even know that, but she knows that, right? So step 1, think about your wife. And that might mean, I'll give you anybody you guys need to, if you need to, pull out your phones and set a recurring reminder like 3:15 every day, 5 minutes, think about your wife. You do whatever you got to do, but stop and think about your wife. It sounds easy. Women are like, you don't tend to compartmentalize as much, and so you're like, that seems like the dumbest advice. But guys, like write it down or you'll forget it. You'll get into something else, okay? Now here's the other thing. The other aspect is anticipate. Women tend to be better at this than men, but men, we are called to love our wives, so let's get better at it, okay? So, and I say number 1 is to think. When I say think about your wife, guys, okay, like this doesn't mean like, oh man, she's so hot. Like that's not where I'm going, okay? Like different kind of thinking, all right? I want you to think about your wife, but I want you to anticipate her needs, right? I want you to think about what she's going to need today. If you set a reminder, put a note on your desk, think about your wife. One of the things you need to be doing, the second thing to remember, anticipate. What's a need that she's going to have today that I can be thinking about right now, and I can meet it before she asks me? Because I'll tell you what, one of the areas that we have felt tension in and where it's crept up in our relationship is my nature is like, I want to serve you. I want to be Christ to you. I want to put you first. I want to serve you. I'm not perfect at it, but that's my, like, anything you need, you tell me, I'll do it for you. And she's like, what I need from you is not be asking me questions and see what needs to be done and go do it. That's what I need from you right now. Good, I'm not the only one, right? Okay. And I'm just like, what? Why are you getting mad? I will do anything and everything you ask. It doesn't make any sense. Why are you being so disrespectful to me right now? Like, okay, so you get how it affects everything. Anyway, I'll keep moving. Anticipate. Think about your wife. Think of one need. Maybe it's like, hey, we're out of milk, so I'm going to pick one up. I'll pick up a gallon of milk when we're out. You do that one thing, and your wife will be like,
How'd you know we were out of milk?
I didn't, right. You will be loving it. Maybe not your wife, though, so know your wife, right? Maybe it's just a note. You send middle of the day, you send a text message to your wife that says, love you, babe. Some of your wives will fall over on the floor if you did that, right? They just fall out, right? You're like, what? Who stole my husband's phone, right? Like, that shouldn't be the case because we need to be anticipating what we need. On the day that she was describing, which was all made up, I should have seen that. Love my wife and do whatever. And the third thing, the last thing, initiate. Guys, again, we're not always rock stars at this, but we need to initiate, right? See the need, anticipate it, and then take action in meeting that need for your wife.
And that's great. I appreciate, you talking to the husbands. But the truth is, it's not always going to work that way, where the husband is the first to step out of that cycle of craziness. And so we as women, remember we talked about this last week, we are accountable to the Lord for what he has asked and what he has required of us. And so you might find yourself in a situation where you're like, my husband has not done a loving thing to me in a really long time, or maybe decades, or maybe he never did, okay? But the truth is we're responsible to the Lord for what he's called us to. And so let me just challenge you, wives, if you're in that situation, take that step today and say, I'm going to begin to learn his language and speak to him in a way, show my love through respect. And for us as women, the easiest way that I think of is first in our words, right? Are the words that are coming out to him, are they respectful? And correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just about are my words oozing respect, but it's less about saying respectful things as it is about saying less disrespectful things. Is that right? Would you agree? And so it's not like, in my words and actions, it's not like you want me to stand at the door and salute you as you walk out every day because I respect you, right? But it's more about doing less things like when you kiss me goodbye, when you leave early in the morning, like shrugging you off and like sighing because you woke me up from my slumber, right? Yeah. So just remember that in your words too. It's less about, say the respectful things too. They do need to hear it, but it's our not just our words, but the tones behind our words, the tone behind what we're saying. To his face, you know what? When he's not around, what are you saying to your kids when he's not around? Are you saying, well, dinner's going to be cold. Dad couldn't leave work in time again. Guess we'll just sit here and wait. I know you're hungry, but man, blame it on your dad, right? Is that the kind of things your children are hearing from you? Are you breeding disrespect in your children? Is that what you're feeding them? And even with our girlfriends, friends, there is a time and place when you are having a struggle. There is a time and place to seek the counsel of someone you know and trust. But even with your girlfriends, let's create a culture of breeding respect of our husbands, even in our friend relationships. So if I have a friendship with Lindsay and I regularly talk to Lindsay about Sean, like, man, you know what Sean did this week? Sean stopped and bought milk on the way home. Like, isn't that cool that he anticipated that need and You know what Sean's always doing? Sean's always helping with the kids, whatever it is. But if that's how our relationship is being built, is by I'm helping breed and grow respect for my husband and Lindsay, then when I'm struggling and I'm having a hard time and I go to Lindsay and I'm like, can you believe he didn't pick up this signal? Can you believe? You know what Lindsay's going to say to me? She's going to say, but that's not who he is. You know that's not who he is. You know he loves you. And she's not going to just jump right in and jump down his throat in disrespect, because I have created this culture in our relationship where it was expected that we would respect our husbands. And so there's a time and place to seek counsel, but let's make sure that before that we've created that, that are building that respect in our friends too. And in a crowd, ladies, with your words, a really nice, well-timed joke that cuts your husband off at the knees is just not worth the laugh. And so let's make sure that when we're in public that we are honoring our husbands with our words. Then also with our actions. You know what? When he walks in the door again, you don't need to salute. You don't need to sing a song. You don't need to do a little dance. But you know what? Acknowledge him. Acknowledge his presence. Stop what you're doing and let him know that you care. You're glad that he chose to come home today. In our thoughts, friends, comparison is a huge enemy of respect for our husbands. If we take our cues from movies, or we watch what our friends' husbands are doing, and we start to think, well, my husband never, that's going to kill any respect that you've started to grow in your heart. So just put it to rest, okay? In your thoughts, make sure that your thoughts even are respectful. And as well, our attitudes. You know, I tell people this all the time. So again, it's not just our words that we say, but it's the tone of our words, but our attitudes about the things that they're passionate about. Learn to love what your husband loves. And you know, if he loves to fix cars, don't roll your eyes and sigh dramatically that he's going out to fix that car again, you know? Learn to love what he loves. You know, maybe you sit next to him while he's doing it. Learn to love, if he loves to play disc golf, learn to love to play disc golf, okay? Or at least watch it on YouTube, okay? But learn to love what he loves, because again, it boils down to what has the Lord required of me. And the Lord, he tells us your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus. And so if you wait until you deem him worthy of respect, that's not following in the attitude of Christ Jesus, because he didn't wait until he deemed us lovable to sacrifice his life for us. The Bible says that while we were still sinners, he died for us. So don't wait. Do it today. Make the choice to do it today. And ultimately, you know, I think let's be women who have more respect for our husbands than anybody else, because what a tragedy it would be if the most respectful words and attitudes that your husband has in his life are when he's with his buddies or when he's at work. What a tragedy. And what a tragedy it would be if you truly said, nobody ever talks to me like that except my wife. What a tragedy. Let's not let that be said of us. Ask the Lord, what can I do to make this better? Sit down with your spouse this week and say, sit down. Women, this is hard. Say these words. What do I do that makes you feel really respected? And then close your mouth. And listen to what he says, and don't respond. And then say, what do I do or have I done that really makes you feel disrespected? And close your mouth and listen and don't respond. And if you want to come back the next day or the day after and talk more about it, that's fine. But he's answering that question that way because there's something there. And if we truly want to reflect Christ in our marriages, then we'll sit down and listen to that.
You know, and we talked about this cycle that just spirals out of control. And that can be scary and intimidating. But once one person, that's what it typically takes, one person starts to flip this around. This is the beauty in God's design. Is as soon as, whether it's the husband or the wife, I'll start with the husband. As soon as the husband says, even though I feel disrespected, I'm going to choose to love my wife unconditionally. I'm going to choose to think about her, anticipate her. I'm going to initiate acts of love towards her. When I choose to do that, what happens then, and this is, again, God's design, what happens then is she is going to feel filled up because of that, right? And so she is going to respond to that love with respect. And then I'm going to feel that respect that I need, and it's going to cause me to want to respond in ways that are acts of love, and that love and then respond in respect. And it begins to create this cycle that makes marriage thrive. It makes marriages fun. It brings joy and life and peace and hope and excitement back into marriages. And that is what God has designed. Now, you got to be willing to have resolve to say, I'm going to work at it. It's not like a microwave type of solution, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna buy her flowers today, and if she doesn't respect me by the end of the day, that's it, right? Like, that's not how it works. We got to be willing to go the distance, but know that the design of God is she's soft to that, and vice versa. So let's love our spouses. Let's respect our spouses. And let's live out the principles that we see in God's word. And then last thing, again, married or single, it doesn't matter. I dare you to start to look at your coworkers this way. Start to look at your neighbors this way. Start to look at your kids this way. Because as men and women, we have different needs. And we express things in different ways. It's not good or bad, it's different. Yet tension with relationships at work. I treat him and her exactly the same, and yet I get this different. Well, of course you do. Because he's a him and she's a her. And he speaks respect and she speaks love. But as we begin to put these principles in play in the relationships we have, starting in our marriages and affecting all the other relationships, you're going to see relationships grow and be healthy and thrive the way that God designed us to. I believe in your marriage. And I want to see God do some amazing things. Amen? Let's close. God, we praise you. We thank you for what you're doing here in us, through us, around us, speaking to us. God, this marriage thing can be hard, if I'm just going to be honest. But it can also be the greatest joy in life. Father, for those who are having a hard time right now, Father, I pray that they would take your word to heart and begin to implement these, regardless of what their spouse does. But God, they would begin to implement these and begin to see you breathe life back into the marriage. For those who are really living the joy of marriage right now, Father, may we fine-tune these things, because, Lord, we can always continue to love our wife better. We can always respect our husbands more and better, that we would speak each other's language, learn one another. God, we just want to be better at this. Sharpen us, God, that we might be able to reflect you to the world that we live in today. God, you are wonderful and awesome. We thank you for this pattern that you've given us. God, it's your name we pray. And everybody said, amen.